So I wanted to just fire this thing up and talk a little bit this morning about why, the whole buy the dip mentality feels a little bit hollow this cycle and kind of what we're doing instead. And, this is it's not meant to be like whining, I just think that many of us that have been hodlers for, more than one or two cycles, in my case, 4 cycles, we are winning, but we're ready to feel like we're winning a little bit more and, not just kind of adhering to the typical advice that you hear, buy the dip and hodl on and all those kinds of things. Just to give you a little bit of background. So I'm Bitcoin class of 2013. Like I mentioned, I've been through 4 cycles. I've seen 80% drawdowns in this space. And so I'm a long-term permabull if there ever was one. Like, I believe Bitcoin is better money. I believe that this is a new protocol. I believe, like Andreas Antonopoulos has said, that I believe that this is the internet of money. It's so much bigger than most people can really wrap their heads around. And after having studied Bitcoin for, more than a decade and watching, thousands of educational videos and content and reading articles, I'm in, So I say all that to say that I think, especially for those of us that are long-term hodlers, I think this cycle we just had a different set of expectations. And I don't think they're unrealistic expectations. I think that with all of the ETFs and, just these massive investment conglomerates like BlackRock and Fidelity and sovereign wealth funds and mining, just all these things, I think it definitely raised my expectations. So I'm rather surprised in many ways that, we're not above 200K in the price. And so that there's just kind of like this disappointment that we're managing right now. There's a fatigue that I think a lot of us are feeling. And this cycle is just, it's sitting very differently now. I remember, sort of the origins of this are, on October 10th, which was, a Friday evening here on the East Coast. I remember, my wife and I were driving to, a little park area downtown and, just to kind of unwind for the week. And, I just happened to sort of open the app and check the price, and I saw this massive, dip starting to happen. And I was like, what in the world is going on? And whenever you see that, it's very jarring, especially since I think maybe the week or two before that we had hit, an all-time high, and, there's just a lot of exuberance. So, I'll admit that, even though, backing out from a meta perspective, I don't care about dips all that much. It's just this cycle, it just seems, kind of different. So I'm in Brian Harrington's Discord group as part of his, YouTube channel membership. And the thing that I love about it is that this is the conversation that we're having right now, and so I wanted to come on here and, just encourage you guys that, it's okay. If you have a long-term hodler mindset and you're in this process of trying to figure out how to incorporate Bitcoin more deeply into your personal finances, it's good to keep in mind, we've already won. Bitcoin is here. It's here to stay. But I also recognize that it's okay to, kind of feel like, we want to feel like we've won. And right now it kind of doesn't feel like that. And I think that the average sort of Bitcoiner content out there is, buy the dip and, it's kind of the same old thing. And so it's not what we really want to hear right now. Now, I'll put up a little bit of a disclaimer. If you're newer to Bitcoin and you haven't gotten to at least 0.21 Bitcoin, at least 0.1, 0.21, a half a Bitcoin, a whole Bitcoin, I would definitely say that this is a phenomenal opportunity for you to, to stack some sats. So you can sort of sidestep a lot of the things that I'm saying here. But I think that one of the things that we're talking about a lot in the community is how I think because of a lot of our, especially those of us that are, long-term hodlers, because of our expectations and sort of what's playing out, all of a sudden we sort of find ourselves, maybe a little bit over allocated in some cases. And so it's definitely kind of changing our posture, at least from a mental framework and maybe from an operational framework. So, there is, yes, we're hodling on with our main Bitcoin stack in terms of, looking at that as our high yield savings account. Not going to touch that. But we were already in this, and many of us are already in this posture where we want to incorporate more of the TradFi products into our overall, Bitcoin personal finance. And so we've started this experiment, and actually tomorrow's video should be an update on the BTCI distributions for that. So incorporated some ETFs and some of the preferred stocks, like the MicroStrategy preferred stocks, STRC, the covered call ETFs, BTCI. Another thing that I think is as I'm, my wife and I are kind of talking through this. We're talking through this in the community. I'm starting to move in this direction where I think just to kind of maintain our resilience, we are going to start kind of not refocusing on fiat, but making fiat, kind of a visible and palpable part of our strategy. So the current idea that we're just sort of rattling around right now is building our overall net worth being 50% in Bitcoin and 50% in fiat. Don't know exactly what that looks like. And I could, fiat could be the ETFs, the covered call ETFs, the preferred stocks, but we're just kind of toying around with that idea right now. Because like I said, we feel at this moment, we're not in any kind of danger or anything, but we do feel a little bit over allocated into Bitcoin and Bitcoin instruments right now. It's funny, I was watching an interview with Morgan Housel, who's the guy that wrote the book, The Psychology of Money. And I don't know what his net worth is, but I'm sure he's probably, 5-10 million. And he was saying that he holds 35% of his net worth in cash. And so, you kind of think about that. Okay, let's say you're worth $10 million. That means you're holding 350,000. No, I'm sorry. That means you're holding 3.5 million in liquid cash. I don't know that I would ever be comfortable with that, especially knowing, what I know about, Bitcoin and knowing what I know about how the financial system actually works. I don't know that I would ever want it to be that high, but I do think that there's merit in holding, at least 100K, 200K, depending on your net worth, to always have some, dry powder. So I'm curious, what are your takeaways, from this dip, from this, change in the market and sort of the market sentiment, and everything is really kind of all over the place right now. So what are you changing right now? By the way, I wanted to start mentioning more on a regular basis. One of the ways my wife and I are incorporating Bitcoin into our personal finances on a daily basis is using the Gemini Orange Bitcoin MasterCard. So you can earn up to 4% cash back on everyday purchases like gas, dining, groceries, and everything else. There's no annual fee, no foreign transaction fees, and no exchange fees on your rewards. Plus, if you sign up using my link in the description below, you get $200 in Bitcoin when you spend your first $3,000 in the first 90 days. So link in the description in the comment below on that. And then if you're in this posture where you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what do I do next? I do offer, one-to-one coaching. There's a link in the description below for that as well. So stay tuned. Tomorrow I should be doing an update on the BTCI covered call ETF, what the distribution or the dividend or distribution is going to be for that. It should be, because of the volatility, I'm imagining that it should be a higher percentage rate than it was for October. So thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.